Welcome. In this lecture, we would have a quick overview about the industrial and the economic geography. To begin with, what was the process of industrialization? The industrialization process started when Britishers actually started to take the raw material from their colonies and start manufacturing those materials based on those raw material within their country. And with this, there were instruments which started to be developed, and it led to a bifurcation in the society as developed economies and less developed economies. Now, developed economies were those which had the highest economic level of development. So, at that time, the starting ones were the Britain. Later on, it spread to Australia, Germany, Britain, France. So, those were the nations where industrialization peaked. On the other hand, there were group of nations which were semi-peripheral, which were not actually the core of industrialization, but not also the colonies or the source of raw material. They were the ones which were affected by the process of industrialization, and these semi-peripheral ones included Romania, Bulgaria as some of those to cite. The idea was these nations were looking for better standards of living, and originally they were either agricultural based nations or manufacturing based nations, and they were trying to move towards a more self-independent society. The next is some important terms when we talk about industrialization and its process. The first is GDP and GNP, gross domestic product and gross net national product. Now, gross domestic product is what? It is the total value of the final goods and services produced within the domestic boundaries of the nation. Now, when we talk about final, what does it mean? It avoids any kind of double counting that exists. So, if wheat is going in as raw material, it would become flour and then it would become bread, right? So we won't count wheat at every step, it would be counted only once, and therefore we say total value of the final goods and services within the domestic boundary. The next is GNP, gross national product, and this GNP is the value of GDP plus the value of income from abroad. Now, the value of income from abroad, what does it mean? Companies like Intel coming and establishing would be an example of value of income from abroad. So, one very important thing in terms of industrialization was transfer of technology. Transfer of technology was important because technology was moving from core to periphery, and this was providing an advantage for the growth and the development of the economy in those areas. Now, some of the areas of the same nation, if we talk about, let's say this is a nation, the average is, let's say, 750 as the national income. I'm taking just a rough example. Now, some of the nations would be above the 750, the others would be below this national average of 750, the other states. So, why does it happen? Why does this state to state variation occurs? Now, this occurs on various accounts. The first is resource availability. Whether the resource is scarce or ample, what is the level of skill, whether the people are low skilled, high skilled, what is the level of investment, whether there is less investment, there is more investment, what is the infrastructural opportunity, whether there is lack of infrastructure or ample infrastructure that is available. So all these factors would determine whether the state would be having above the national average or below the national average. Now, two important things. One was the Millennium Development Goals. There were 8 goals which were defined, and the idea was to eliminate poverty by 2015. So it included eliminating hunger and poverty as the first goal, universal education as its second goal, gender equality, which was women empowerment. Now, women are usually low paid wages, are paid on low wages, and again, along with family responsibility, women have to work. So this further deteriorates the condition, and therefore promoting gender equality and women empowerment was one of the key focus. Reducing child mortality. The fourth goal, improving mother's health or maternal health, combating diseases like HIV, malaria, environmental sustainability, and global partnership for development. So these were the 8 goals under Millennium Development Goals. Later, Sustainable Development Goals were brought and 17 goals under Sustainable Development Goals were released, which are applicable as of now as well. Now, another important thing, industrialization. Industrialization occurred in regions. So there were primary industrial areas and secondary industrial areas. Now, primary industrial areas were the areas where the first wave of industrialization came in. Now, these primary industrial areas or the main industrial areas was West and Central Europe. That was the first area. East of North America was the second important region. Russia and Ukraine were another important areas, and then East Asia, just the East Asia was another important primary industrial centers. Later on, secondary industrial centers came in. For example, in the region of South America, Brazil, Venezuela, Argentina became the second centers for industrial revolution. Meiji Restoration, similarly in Japan, was one of the classic cases where the idea was government sponsored campaign for modernization and colonialization started. Also, there were 4 tigers of East and Southeast Asia, and these were Korea, South Korea, Taiwan, Hong Kong, and Singapore. So these 4 nations again became one of the major centers or 4 major tigers of development and growth. In the case of China, if we talk about the regions of Pacific coast, were the